Welcome everyone. Just give everyone a few seconds to join, and we'll get started. So thank you for joining today's presentation. My name is Craig McInnes, and I'll be hosting. Although Scott will be doing most of the speaking around this topic, and really excited to have him here today. So as people continue to join here, let's get started. I'll give you a little bit of background for those of you that haven't either heard of myCaribou or been on one of these webinars. My name is Craig McInnes. I'm a co-CEO at myCaribou. I'll be moderating this session, introducing Scott. I'll also do a quick little demo of the product towards the end. It is a global platform transforming the way medtech manufacturers and distributors find and manage their partnerships all over the world. With this platform, you can discover new markets with over 80,000 data points in 100 plus countries. You can build new partnerships by connecting with over 43,000 manufacturers and distributors in 150 countries. And probably most important, relevant to today's presentation, is around more effectively, more efficiently managing those global partnerships, improving communication, monitoring performance. So Scott's going to talk to some of the best practices today, and I will, towards the end, show how the platform can support those best practices as we move forward. So let me introduce you to Scott. Thrilled to have him here today with decades of experience and great insights, and looking forward to his presentation today. So Scott has over 4 decades of success in international medical device markets with Hillrom, DeRoyal, CR Bard, and Cardinal Health. He's built successful medtech channels around the globe for both a distributor and a manufacturer's perspective, which I think is very relevant for today's presentation. He's managed partner relationships in Europe, South America, North America, and the Asia Pac regions, established global distribution infrastructure through 18 countries for an Australian-based manufacturer, safe patient handling equipment, and while with Cardinal Health in Canada, managed a team responsible for over 400 manufacturer relationships. With over 40 years in the medtech industry, Scott is the perfect person to help us avoid the management pitfalls of medtech partnerships. So thanks for joining today, Scott. I'm going to pass it over to you.
Great, my pleasure. Thanks for the introduction, Craig. Welcome to all those joining us from the various locations. It's always an honor to speak to the myCaribou global audience as we look to improve and focus on best practices for managing expanding global partnerships. The foundation of this is everybody we talk to agrees that at any time a third of partnerships are solid and driving the majority of the revenue, a third are weak and need work, and then a third need to be cut loose. So, I'd just like to start by reflecting that no matter how big this industry is, and there's a lot of big players and everything, every product that was ever made and every product that was ever launched into a market started somewhere and started small. The challenge has always been how and with who to get this product to the market. I reflect on an icon in the Canadian industry where I'm Canadian and who started selling IV catheters as a manufacturer's agent back in the 1950s or 60s, and then building quite a large and successful distribution business. It just makes me think that everything starts at some point, and the challenges are the same today as they always have been. And that is, how do you find the right market and how do you find the right partner to do it? So today, from my office here in Toronto, we'll cover 3 things. One, let's take a look at why these medtech partnerships are difficult. And then the bulk of the discussion will be looking at a number of the pitfalls that you can avoid. And then finally, we'll just wrap up by hopefully finding some better ways as we understand by avoiding these pitfalls, find a better way to succeed and grow your business. So let's start with why so difficult. Well, we've learned many pain points and validated many pain points over the past few years as working alongside the group at myCaribou as we explore this industry. And the first is expectations. Why Why are expectations so unclear and unrealistic? Manufacturers often don't research their markets. They make broad assumptions, not recognizing that rarely two markets are the same. Therefore, they don't identify true or realistic results that they want to go after. What resources are required? Who's going to pay? This is often an afterthought. The cultural differences. So cultural illiteracy is a very real thing and is often not considered when developing a trusting and productive relationship with your partners. I realized this when I was working in Australia a number of years ago when, just quite simply, the North American work culture isn't the same there. It's a great work culture. It's a great country, but there were differences, and you had to adjust your strategies and planning and processes to adapt to that cultural difference. So cultural illiteracy. Do your homework on the cultures of the countries you're going into. Business planning and reviews, they need to be comprehensive and effective, and they rarely are. Accountability is so needed. And then finally, why has it been so difficult? Well, people are busy, and people are busier all the time. There are many communication tools. Many are misused, and you need to decide, what will be most effective for you and your organization, and mirror that up with your partners. So let's start with the pitfalls, and there's 8 or 9 that I want to cover today with you. I'm sure those of you on board listening have your own experiences, and hopefully this triggers some thought of how you want to look at your business and maybe some of the things you want to avoid. But let's go. Let's start with the partner selection. Have a process. Okay. How often have you received an email or a business card at a conference from somebody who wants to make lots of promises? And if you're a manufacturer, the pitfall is that distributors are not always who they say they are. So I share a story. When I was the managing director of Hillrom Australia, a senior executive of the organization was approached at Medtech about solving all our problems in Australia and recommending that we disbanded our sales force and go through their distribution company. Well, because we had a process, and the senior executive certainly didn't, he said, well, we have a process, so let's get talking about it, which was great. And since we had a process, I think we were able to avoid that reactive disaster that we could have had by assessing the situation. And as it turned out, this distributor, we did some due diligence, had very little presence in acute care and some presence in long-term care, and it just would have been a disaster. So we avoided that. We'll move on. So very, very important when choosing your partners is, and I want to stress this, is call points are far more important. Call point synergies is far more important than product synergies. Not that product synergies aren't, but make sure that your distributor is in that call point. Product training is a lot easier than call point training. I hope that registers with you, because if your distributor may say, oh, we're in the cardiac care unit, we're in the cardiac OR, but if they're not in the cath lab and you're selling angiography diagnostic catheters, you're going to be in trouble, because the cath lab is a whole other world requiring expertise in that call point. So same thing if you're selling capital equipment that perhaps has a caregiver safety component to it. You may be talking to the transport team and selling your product there, but if your distributor isn't calling on occupational health and safety, you're going to have a tough go. So make sure that your distributor is in the call points you need them to be. Check references, do your due diligence, coverage, call points, reputation, do it all on the front end, and avoid the temptation of jumping into a relationship with a guy full of good intentions And don't be fooled by these distributors who aren't what they say they are. In fact, the myCaribou opportunity posting can filter through a lot of that and perhaps uncover several better prospects than the guy you may meet at a trade show. Next is sales models. You have options. Depending on the markets that you're going into, don't lock yourself into one particular model that thinks that it'll work in your home country, it'll work elsewhere, etc. Make sure you have the right model to succeed with your business. Are there enough feet on the ground? Have you got the coverage that you need? Do you need a dedicated effort? I had a situation where I was selling, marketing a piece of capital equipment in the United Kingdom, and the distributor there dedicated somebody for a year to the product, and it really, really helped get that thing launched because it was that level of expertise. So I lost my screen here somehow. Am I still on?
Yeah, you are, and we're still on slide 2, but yeah, I'm not sure why you're not seeing it. Maybe Angela, just let me know if there are any concerns on your end. If not,
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't think I touched on it. All right. So just having that right sales model. If they're a logistics partner, maybe great providing logistics, but the reality is, do they have the feet on the ground? Are they doing selling for you? Do you have the budget for your own sales rep? Or do you want to consider a commission agent? Is that a possibility? And then choosing an agent, make sure they get the call point for you as well. The call point synergy should be there. I launched a major line a capital equipment line out of the Czech Republic a few years ago. And they had business models in various parts of the world. And we looked at it. We looked at a sort of a hybrid, the hybrid between a distributor that would provide logistics, inventory, warehousing, support. And we filled that in with sales agents and service agents. And there was enough margin there to cover for that. We'll talk about margins a little bit. But again, it was a hybrid model that worked quite well. And this company out of the Czech Republic then has started to use that similar hybrid model in some other countries. So be open, look at your options, make some good decisions. Contracts. Take them seriously from the outset. The pitfall here is a standard contract does not address the specific requirements of your business. So avoid non-exclusive contracts that don't support you, don't protect you. I think exclusivity in most cases should be mutual. Inventory inventory considerations are very important. Many manufacturers will look to inventory load on a distributor, and that's a warning sign. Make sure that they're not just loading inventory on you to fill their own, perhaps their own investors' requirements. It can be a dangerous thing, especially in a product that you're in a marketplace where it's a developmental product. I've seen situations where, one particular situation where an anesthesia dealer in Canada was being dumped inventory or a lot of pressure to buy inventory that had a capital component with a disposable component, and the disposable piece had expiry dates on it, and they kept pushing and pushing to buy inventory. So be careful in your contracts that you don't overcommit to inventory requirements, especially in a product development scenario, a market development scenario. And finally, expectations and KPIs. I would build those into your contracts on the front end. Don't wait till later, because that will reveal on the front end when you're negotiating. It will give visibility to the expectations of your partner. and then revisit that. And we'll talk about business reviews in a bit. Share a wallet. Well, you want feet on the street, you want distribution, you're tens of thousand miles away from the country you're in. Is your partner given any time to your product? How do you know? Well, it's difficult and a common trap. But does your partner really have those resources? Are you the flavor of the month? They're looking for quick hits. All of this built, of course, back to contracts, but feet on the street is so important. The trap is a partner that is great on logistics, but light on outbound selling. And too often, this is what leads to a slow decline in the relationship. Manufacturers start to add their own people. This is so they can reduce, and this then reduces distributor margins. So think about that. You start off with good intentions. You realize you're not getting the share of wallet, and you start adding your own people. You start cutting margins to your distributor, and now you got finger pointing and sort of an awkward situation. But that scenario plays over and over all the time. So as the pitfall to avoid is understanding that partnership going in and ensuring you get the share of wallet that you need. We'll go to the next one. Margins. So margins drive behavior. The pitfalls to avoid is learning that after the fact, your partner has margin expectations or requirements that price you out of the market, particularly in the United States, where distributors will often have sub-distributors. So you want to be focused on an understanding of the market, do some homework on what your end user selling price is, where you want to be positioned against your competition, but make sure you got the margins in there to support the model that you want. Again, address that on the front end. There's got to be absolute clarity as to that flow through of your cost to your sell price. And as a manufacturer in this case, ensure that you're getting your share. I've seen situations where there's been so many layers of margin in some countries that the manufacturer is certainly by far making the least on the product, and in the distribution channel that's been created is making all the money, or put them in a position where it's difficult to do business. KPIs, that could be a deal maker or breaker. The pitfall is poorly developed, implemented, and managed KPIs. So you have to have the input and buy-in from those who are executing. When I did some work with Cardinal Health Canada's largest distribution company, countless times I saw where objectives had been established and set and promises made to manufacturers by the business development and marketing teams without the buy-in from sales. So it's pretty important that at the end of the day, sales are executing, you better have their buy-in. So beware, that's a pitfall to avoid. And have that process for review, to ensure that the KPIs are part of every review, so that you can ensure clarity as to how you're going to manage that business with that partner. Sustainability. Be mindful of celebrations. Pitfall is celebrating too soon. Don't take your eye off your long-term objectives. When you enter a market, you may get some quick hits. Successes can be very short-term, and this can often derail your long-term strategy. So, you may peak early. Everybody gets excited. Inventory gets purchased. Things are going great, but it may just be a blip or a cycle in the buying cycle. And beware of that pitfall. I've seen it happen, and it distorts expectations and forces sort of a retreat in what we really have. And I think I'm just going to say it a couple times in here is that when you're new with somebody, you're the flavor of the month, and you're the new guy and you may get a lot of action at first. So ensure you've got a sustainable plan and agreement with your partner. So communication, the pitfall here is, like most things, it's failing to establish good communication practices. So whatever method you choose, establish this from the beginning and commit to a regular schedule. Avoid reactive dialogue and ensure there's a process in place to keep the relationship and the business moving forward, despite any challenges or setbacks. And I think we all relate to that. We talk to people when things are going good, and then we have, then there's problems, and the communication, unfortunately becomes one of, just solving problems as opposed to having a regular schedule to be driving the business in a sustainable, manageable way with realistic expectations. So avoid that pitfall. Business reviews, make it count. This kind of rounds out the pitfalls to avoid. I've sat through far too many meaningless and ineffective business reviews. Have a template that captures the KPIs and performance expectations, and then a process whereby these are reviewed on a regularly scheduled basis. Business reviews need to drive accountability. And, not just to be a reason to renew the relationship. So again, I've been on both sides of the table, and manufacturers and distributors often get together with two different song sheets. One man manages their expectations and says one way and one another way. Be aligned, and I can't stress that more. Too often business reviews are, quarterly or, semi-annual business reviews. They spend the first 30, 40 minutes trying to remember what they committed to and talked about the last time. So it becomes Groundhog Day. And, if you have a formal structure in place for business reviews, then it's a much more effective way of managing the business, and certainly a pitfall to avoid. So finally, what do we know? What have we learned by avoiding these pitfalls? This should improve the likeliness that you're in the right place. And by that, I mean the right market with a clear understanding of the business potential, the culture, the regulatory requirements, the right timing. And by avoiding these pitfalls, you should improve your chances of selecting the right partner. Whether you're a distributor looking for a reliable and validated supplier, or a manufacturer looking for a distributor that will get the job done and aligned with your expectations. This will drive effective business planning and managing those expectations. All that goes with that, with contracts, KPIs, communication reviews, just to name a few. So I'll leave you to think about some of your current partners, or perhaps one you were considering, and where they will be in a year's time in that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 equation. What changes or approach did you implement today to accelerate the success within your organization? And with that, Craig, I'll turn it back to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate that. And what I'm going to do next is just with this in mind, the right place, the right partner, the right plan. I'm going to bring up myCaribou briefly and give you a sense of how you can do that in the platform. While I'm doing that, I would encourage you to submit your questions for Scott. We did get a good handful of questions in advance that we'll go through as well. You can put those questions in the Q&A panel or the chat panel, whichever you prefer. I'll take you for a quick overview here. I want to really focus on the pitfalls that Scott discussed, and I'll show you how the platform can help you with that. And again, as I'm doing that, put your questions in, and in a few minutes we'll get back to the Q&A on this topic, and then we'll wrap up. So let me start just very briefly. If there's really three main aspects to the myCaribou platform. The first is market discovery, so understanding the markets that you're considering going into before you go into them. There is finding and connecting with new partners, so find the right partner, which was point 2 on Scott's last slide. And then the last piece is around the whole planning aspect, the business planning, KPIs, financial forecasts, communication, collaboration, goal setting, and that would be part of what we call the collaborating part of the platform. So very quickly, market discovery, we cover 105 countries around the world. You can click on any one of those countries. You can view the market information. In this case, I chose Mexico. We cover off 6 key areas from an overview of the market, expenditures, financing, assets and deployment, all the way down to regulatory. So we do provide an overview of the regulatory environment. We also cover things like the private public mix of spending, where spending takes place. We cover, in the examples that Scott was talking about earlier, if you need to know the number of neurologists or the number of, cardiologists, or whatever it might be, we have all that data here at our fingertips. So we cover that on 105 countries, even though we have manufacturers and distributors in over 150 countries. The market data is that top 105 countries. The second thing we do is help you find partners, and you can do that in one of 2 ways. One is to simply take a market you're trying to go into, or a supplier you're trying to find, shortlist a potential set of suppliers or distributors, reach out to them through the platform and build partnerships. Or you could do what's called an opportunity post, which Scott mentioned, and I'll show you both of those today. So for example, if you were looking for a distributor or a sales agent in a market like Brazil, I'm going to show you that from 44,000 companies, if I apply that, you're going to have a subset of 1,100 distributors in Brazil, from which I can then get more specific. And to Scott's point, product categories are critical, but so are call points. What do they sell? Who do they sell to? Okay, I'm going to just keep this simple and show you a list of cardiovascular distributors. From there, you can then view that potential distributor, view their full profile, go to their LinkedIn page, their website, and ultimately, if you were ready to, you could connect to that particular distributor. So that's an example of a manufacturer looking for distribution. If you're a distributor in a particular country and you are looking for manufacturers, let's say again, I'm that distributor that I just mentioned in Brazil, and now I'm looking for cardiovascular manufacturers. You can see here that there are almost 1,500 manufacturers. And what I'm going to do is just say I'm looking for, to Scott's example earlier, I'm just going to be able to spell it correctly. I'm looking for catheter manufacturers, and that's now 110 globally, and you can see they're from different parts of the world here. Any one of those, again, I could click on it, view the company profile, view their web page, view their LinkedIn page, and ultimately connect to them. So that's one way to find partners, much quicker than obviously Google searches, going to trade shows, et cetera, et cetera. The other way to do it, though, is what we call opportunity posts. And I'm just going to bring up, this is the live platform. So these are real opportunity posts. So you can see some examples of recently posted ones. And I'll use this first one just as an example. So this is a French manufacturer. So I'll just look at the opportunity here. So French manufacturer, and they are looking for distributors in North and South America. You can see the countries they've identified where they're looking for distributors. They provide a description of who they are, what they do. In this particular case, they also mentioned they're going to the FIME show in Miami in June and have a booth there if you're interested in meeting with them. If you want to connect with them directly through the platform, you would just simply respond, and you'll see that this particular manufacturer is going to ask you 5 questions. Do you have complementary or competing products, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an example of a manufacturer looking for distribution in a particular part of the world. Now I'll try to find one. I'm just going off of names I recognize here, but there are lots of examples in here as well of distributors that are looking for manufacturers, and the same thing would be true. So here's an example. This is a US-based distributor, and they're looking for a particular product, and again, that would get matched with manufacturers. On that note, there is a match score here in the second column from the right. I'm logged in as myCaribou, so the match scores would be irrelevant to me. But if you went in as a manufacturer of cardiovascular related products, you're going to see matched distribution opportunities globally for your products. Okay, so discover markets, find partners, connect with new partners, post opportunities. Incredibly powerful way to build that network. If you think about what Scott mentioned, that bottom third of your distribution, for example, that needs to be replaced, or as a distributor, that bottom third of suppliers that need to be replaced. These are great tools to do that. Now, what I want to do though is switch gears to the planning part, the part that Scott really focused on for most of the presentation today, which was ways to make that relationship more successful. So we have built a collaborative platform, and I'm gonna put my manufacturer hat on first. And what you're viewing right now on my screen is my distribution network globally. So I've identified my partners, such as Big Green Surgical and Cal Surgical in Australia. I've got 2 distributors in Brazil, 3 in Canada, and so on. This is called my partners, and it is a way to manage, but also potentially collaborate with these partners. So for example, I could manage my relationship with Big Green Surgical in here, or I could invite them in as well to collaborate with me. So as opposed to just being a management tool, it becomes a collaboration tool. So I'll show you an example of that. Let's look at Medtech Supply, one of my Canadian distributors. And you'll see that in this particular case, we can actually decide who is included in this. I don't know why that's hanging on me here. Just give me a second. It's weird. Very strange. I've been having a few technical issues today, including with Teams and Zoom, but let me just pause for a second and I'll yeah, it looks like I'm hung up here. Sorry, folks, just give me a second here. I'm gonna just close that up and I'll reopen here. It might just be that our the demo site may be down momentarily. So maybe I'll stay here on our live platform. So again, with my partners, you can manage your partnerships all over the globe. So again, if you want to invite partners in to collaborate with you in any of these in myCaribou, you can do so. Let me just see them. Oh yeah, here we go. I'm back up. Okay, so let's look at. I'm going to look at a couple things we could do here related to managing those partnerships. So we can have conversations. So for example, here with GC Medical, you can see the dialogue that's happening back and forth between myself and my partner. We can share files. Okay, so I've got fact sheets, product fact sheets here, business reviews, etc. All in here with my partners. GC Medical, if I invite them in, they can only see their relationship with me. They don't see all my other partners. They have no view on that whatsoever. But the great thing about this is as you start to build up these partners and invite them in, number one, they are free. So if you're a subscriber of our platform, you can invite all these partners in, and at no cost to them, they can work with you in the platform, share files, do forecasts, etc., which I'll show you here momentarily. So here is just turn on the sales view for a second. This would be my forecasting tool. So again, whether I am inviting GC Medical to do this with me in the platform, or whether I'm just using it to manage my target and actual sales in that market, you've got those 2 different options. Ideally, you want to collaborate with them and agree on those targets and track to those targets. And you can see it's done at a very simple level, quarterly level, by product category, if you want to drill into this, by product, if you want to get specific, in each of those. So you can see your sales forecast by market, by country. And on that note, by the way, I can also switch this around. I'm viewing it by market currently. You could also view it by partner. So for example, Biomedica is actually my distribution partner in Argentina, Chile, and Uruguay. And I can have sales forecasts in each of those markets rolling up to my sales forecast with that particular partner. Okay, so viewing it by partner, viewing it by market, completely up to you how you want to do that. So the sales view, you can turn that on and off. Inside of each of these, you can actually get into things like KOLs, objective setting and tracking can all be done inside of this. I'll just show you an example of that. So this is a partnership here, and I've set a sales plan, and I've set some objectives to manage to. So you'll see here that in this particular case, we just set 3 major objectives in our relationship, put in a target and actual per quarter, and we're tracking to that. And the great thing about that is it gives us visibility on how we're doing, both from a sales perspective, but also from objectives perspective. And then again, rolling that back up to your global view, you can see, how you're doing with all your partners around the world here. So one other thing I'll just show you very quickly is the idea that you can communicate with multiple partners or do things with multiple partners at once. So I'll show you an example of that. I could take my entire distribution network globally, or my entire supplier pool, if you're on the other side of this as a distributor, and I could do something like simple, send a message. We're going to FIME in Miami in June. Would love to connect with you there. Here's my meeting link. Let's get together while we're there. That would be an example of that. And that would go out to all your partners. Or maybe you would say in that situation, I'm only going to target sort of North and South America because that show is in this part of the world. And so I won't include, my Spanish distributors, my UK distributors, but I'll send a message to the rest of them. Another example would be sharing a file. You have an updated product sheet, fact sheet, information about service and support related to your products, recalls, anything that might be like that. You can drag that file in here, and it gets distributed out to all your distributors in a single place. Now we are going much deeper on this. There's a lot of capability here today, but we are moving down the path, for example, of financial tools. So for example, payment processing, foreign exchange, and even hedging foreign exchange against future volatility is part of what we're building into this platform and getting ready to release in the near term. I am actually going to ask Angela if she's listening to just post a link to a survey for anyone who's interested. We'd love your feedback on how you handle payment processing, foreign exchange fluctuations, whether you're a distributor or a manufacturer. We have a quick little survey we'd love to get your feedback on, so feel free to do that. So I'm just going to wrap up here on the demo and get to the Q&A. But I did really want to reiterate, the idea of communication, collaboration, all the pitfalls that Scott spoke to around partner management can really be done through here and done incredibly easily. You can build out this list of your partners very quickly in the platform, and you could even take all these partners simultaneously and invite them into myCaribou to work with you for free. Very simply, it sends them an email, they join, and they get visibility into just your relationship with them. That's it. But it can be done incredibly quickly, and we can really tackle some of those pitfalls that Scott mentioned. All right, on that note, so I'm going to pause there on the demo portion of this. We'll flip over to the question and answer part of it. So I'm going to start, Scott, with some of the questions that came in advance, while I have a look at some of the ones that are being posted live as well. So again, everyone, please feel free to add questions as we go. So Scott, one of the initial questions here was, what do you do if the partner is pushing back and isn't putting the effort into communication? And I suppose this could be on either side of the coin, manufacturer, distributor, manufacturer. They're not putting in the effort for communication. They're pushing back about that. What would your response be? Oh, you're muted, Scott. Sorry.
I would raise the bar and have a higher expectation of that partner and formalize it. And whether you feel there's a need for it or not, or they feel a need for it or not, the second Tuesday of every month at 11 o'clock a.m., you're going to have a meeting and, try to drive that behavior. If it's a case of a company that says we don't operate that way, they may not be the right partner. It's just the short answer is to try to formalize a regular scheduled time to talk, and then have a song sheet that you're both singing from.
Yeah. So it ties in actually to the second question, which is around effective business reviews and getting a partnership back on track. So I'm gonna sort of reword this a little bit. I guess the first thing I'm gonna ask you about is, I know you've told me many times the stories of business reviews becoming sort of repetitive, rehashing the same issues over and over again. You get together once a quarter, twice a year, whatever it is, and
Yeah.
you're rehashing the same issues. So how do you address that first? And I'm going to ask you a second part around communication.
Well, you have to address that through meaningful KPIs that you both agree on. And I mentioned how these things need to be addressed on the front end. They need to be addressed during the contract negotiations. Because it's once you get into that partnership and everybody's gone in their own directions, it's much harder to pull everybody back in line.
Okay, good. So let's so you talked about share of wallet in one of your slides, one of the pitfalls.
Yeah.
So the question here is, should a distributor disclose how many reps or how much time will be allotted to your products? And I've heard this one many times.
Sure. That's a tough one. I mean, there's culture there. There's some insecurity there. It's sort of the standard has been for distributors not wanting to be too visible from their partners. But I do know one company that brags about the fact that they're very visible with their suppliers, a distribution company, and they feel that is what enhances their relationship. That's what helps them grow their business, and builds a long-term, solid, sustainable relationship with that supplier. So it's a personal choice. There's no one answer to that, but I suppose a contract could possibly be used to drive that behavior change if that's what you're looking for in your partner.
Yeah, it's funny, and it's when I was showing the KPIs, the part of myCaribou earlier. So the question here is about like the number of reps, which to me as a lifelong business development executive, managing teams of salespeople, is kind of wrong. It's a wrong way to look at it. It's more about the outcomes of that. So what are those objectives? Is it, number of visits into hospitals, number of presentations to dentists if you sell to dentists? Is it, things that are outcome based as opposed to, yeah, you said you have 5 reps selling this. Well, that's just a number. It's what are they doing? What are those,
Right.
What am I seeing in the way of sort of funnel or
Right.
activity that's going to lead to actual sales?
Yeah, and that's the magic formula that we'd all like. As I'm in the manufacturer's chair, I'd love visibility to that. We talked about a lot of things, but what are the margins there to support that? Is the share of wallet there? Is the commitment there? Have they bought into your strategy? Do you understand the strategy? Do you understand the market and the potential? It's
Right.
doing all those things, Craig. And but perfect world, you have great visibility and accountability and reportability coming back to you from your distributor. But even if you could work in that direction to get a piece of that, you're probably a lot further ahead than you would be otherwise. So
Yeah, I think, you said to me many times about sort of that compromise between what the manufacturer wants, what the distributor is willing to disclose, and somewhere in the middle is something we can agree on, which might be, quarterly forecasts by product category, as opposed to asking for a list of which hospitals are you selling to. There is some common ground there because really what you're trying to figure out is how much we're going to sell, because the whole supply chain side of it and everything else, and what's the future look like too?
Here's the thing a manufacturer wants to avoid. They want to avoid a complete lack of activity on behalf of their product line when they're not in the country working with them. And too often that happens, all of a sudden, hey, you have meetings, you get windshield time with the reps, things are scheduled because you showed up in the country. And business development people working globally, sure, you're going to have meetings, but how do you establish that relationship using some of these tools so that when you do enter into the country, that twice a year, every quarter, to work with them, it's so much more meaningful and so much more productive.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great way to put it. You mentioned margins there. There was a question around margins. So my distributor doesn't share pricing or revenue with me. I say their revenue, right? How can I be certain that they are not taking excessive margins, which will impact my market share?
You got to ask them and demand it. I don't know if legally they have to. Some countries are different, but I think if there isn't visibility to your end user purchase price and margins, you may want to run. That's how do you know? How do you know if you're being marketed properly?
Right. In the meantime, if you're overpriced, your competitor might be, underselling or undercutting you on the price. And so there's a few that have come in here as we've been speaking, and I have a few product questions as well here that came in, but I'll hit a couple of these online ones first. So one of them was just focusing on kind of doing a webinar like this for agents. Now, I don't know if you're delineating between sales agents and distributors, but I will mention we are actually in the final stages of teeing up. Well, I believe it's going to be in April or maybe early May, a webinar which is a panel of distributors specifically. Now, if the question was adding sales agents to that, maybe just send me a separate note here, because we could consider doing that as well. I know that term means different things in different markets, but in general, we could look at adopting some agents into that discussion as well, as opposed to more, distribution companies, which is who we normally think of in terms of distributors.
I'm guessing this question, Craig, is specific to independent agents.
Yeah.
That
like
I
that.
think are playing a more increasingly more impactful role in our industry. So.
Yeah, it's a good point. So, and in fact, this person did follow up with yes, sales agents specifically. So, yeah. So let's. In fact, if you have any, so we have connections there as well. But if you've got some suggestions, we'd love to do that. It's a great idea. Thank you. What criteria to adopt for the divorced manufacturer distributor before making a new partnership is the question here for you, Scott. So.
Criteria to adopt. So what they're describing is that before you start a new partnership, what do you need to be addressing between the old partnership?
Sounds that way. How do you end the other one to make sure you're setting yourself up for success with a new one, I guess?
All right. Boy.
Tough one. Tough question.
Yeah. That would depend on the market, the companies, the size of the business. I guess you have to be careful that the divorced distributor isn't, shopping for a replacement product and takes half your market share away. So, what I'd like to say is do all this work on the front end to minimize the chances of a divorce. How's that?
Right. Yeah, I remember one of the distributors on a previous webinar saying that the question was really about her being replaced either by going direct from the manufacturer or finding a new distributor. And her comment pretty bluntly was, if I'm doing my job and we're working together, that's not going to happen. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, there are a couple product questions here. I'll hit them very quickly and then we'll wrap up if there aren't any additional questions. So there's a question about if your partners are not in myCaribou currently, how could you manage them the way that I had shown on the My Partners view? Yeah, I touched it briefly towards the end, but you can invite them one at a time, or you can actually bring up your entire list of partners you've added to your dashboard, and you can invite them all very, very quickly. They get an email. The email allows them to, if they're accessing it for the first time, we will validate that they in fact are with the company. We check their LinkedIn profile, that kind of stuff, and then give them permission. At that point, they are now active, and you will see them in your partnership right in that dashboard. So it's pretty straightforward to do it. If you ever have any problems, I know a lot of people on the call today are customers using the platform. You can always use the online help, the chat, which is live our team is great at responding as well to that. So, so there was a question here about this company tracks a number of metrics with our partners. An example given was number of in-hospital demos. Can you track that in the tool? Yeah, I for sake of time, I didn't get too detailed there, but for each of those partnerships, you can set any number of objectives together, any number of criteria, KPIs. It could be as simple as 1 or 2, or maybe a handful if that's appropriate. We do them at the quarterly level, plan and actual, or target and actual, and it's really powerful. And in fact, some of the direction we're going with the platform is to really automate more of the business reviews from that data. So if you're managing that in there, obviously it's all in one place. We're going to continue to enhance that capability of doing more automated, more sort of facilitated business reviews based on the data that's already in the platform. So it's an exciting direction that we're going with the platform. There was a question about opportunity posts. So yeah, I hit that pretty quickly today. So that's a way to find new partners, and Scott mentioned it in one of his as well. And the question was, how soon would you start to see responses on an opportunity post? It's a tough question to answer. It really depends. The general answer is a couple weeks. So if you post an opportunity, we do some promotion on your behalf. We have probably the world's largest database of medical device manufacturers and distributors. I say probably, it has to be at this point. So we do have a lot of promotional capabilities. You will start to see some responses inside of 2 weeks, but it does depend. It depends on how targeted your opportunity post is. So if you say I'm looking for distributors in Europe, that's very broad. If you say I'm looking for distributors in Poland because I had a lot of success in the Czech Republic, that's a very targeted opportunity post. If you have an innovative product, you're going to get more responses than if it's kind of a Me Too product. So there are a lot of variables, but generally speaking, it takes about 2 weeks to get some responses to that. Let me just double check here. I think, yeah, sorry, a good question here just came in about the platform. Does it send alerts or reminders? Can you set reminders? Is there any integration with Teams Network? So let me hit the, so notifications would be the term, and in platform, I mean, that covers part of what you're asking about. So you can set your own notification preferences like most platforms. And we also use the @mention approach, which I think anyone familiar with tools like Slack or any others, you know, you @mention someone and that will trigger that notification as well. So I see them regularly when people are @mentioning me in various places, whether it's you know, discussing a file, having a discussion itself, a sales forecast, etc. That will trigger notifications. Today we don't have integration with Teams or Outlook. I would ask maybe just if you wouldn't mind a follow up on that, on your question. Just tell me what you think you would do with that. I would love to hear your thoughts, and I'm going to give you my email information in a minute if you want to reach out to me directly on that. We do not integrate with Teams and Outlook today, but I'd be curious as to how you think you might use that in the platform. So maybe just send me a follow up on that. All right, I think I've covered all the online questions, most of the ones that came in advance. Scott, I want to thank you very much for your time. Just before I leave everyone, let's, I'm just going to bring up our contact information so you all have that if you want to reach out to Scott or myself. So let me just bring that up on my other screen here. My apologies. And there we go. So we do, I should have mentioned, we have an upcoming webinar as well later in April around that whole opportunity post concept we just talked about. So it's a best practices approach to finding and building new partnerships using the platform, and that's on April 26th. And we have a few others that are coming out as well. I don't know that we put Scott's contact info in here. So Angela, if you wouldn't mind, just post it to the chat. And anybody who wants to reach out to Scott or myself, we'll give you both of our email addresses. We're more than happy to connect with anyone afterwards and answer any questions you might have. So we'll go ahead and do that. Looks like Angela's done that. Thank you. And if you get a chance to do that survey that we posted earlier as well, that'd be great. We'd love to hear your thoughts on some of the financial capabilities that we're building on the platform that we're really excited about. And we'd love to get your feedback on those as well. So Scott, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate this. I always love hearing your stories and your insights with the kind of experience you've had over 40 plus years in the space. I never get tired of it. So thank you for doing that. Really appreciate it. Thank you all for joining today.
you.
Have a great rest of your day, and look forward to seeing you on the subsequent webinars. Thanks, everyone.